black walnuts. That's a tough nut to crack, apparently. Woo! Hello, welcome to Bustin' Nuts with Justin and Austin. I'm Austin, and I'd like to just tell you that from here on out, aside from that title sequence, this video is more or less safe for work. This goes out to all those busybody suburbanites out there, such as myself, who want to process all those black walnuts they've got dropping in their yard and on their patio. A little later in the video, we'll pay a visit to my friend Justin in the nut house, aka his windowless basement. But before we do all that, I thought this process needed a little bit of an introduction, and first I'd go over the materials that we'd want to gather up. Oh, and I just thought of a big main one that I didn't have on the list, so we'll talk about it. And it's the big takeaway from Justin as well, is rubber gloves, and not just rubber gloves, but 2 rubber gloves on each hand, or you might end up with some stained fingers, like my thumbnail here. Yeah, that's been nice and brown across there for about a week and a half, 2 weeks now. So beyond that, you're going to want sheet cardboard for laying down and protecting your driveway and floor surfaces. Some preferably worn and brown colored work boots, and you'll see my take on that in a minute. Some screens or netting, something that you don't mind getting stained, onion bags, things like that, mesh, a box fan or a dehumidifier to dry the nuts in a single layer, some hand sledgehammers in the 3 or 4 pound variety. You saw me using that at the beginning of the video. A pick, pliers or needle nose pliers as well. Got those here. Somewhere I've got a pick around here. I don't see it now, of course. Oh well, you know what a pick looks like. Bowls. Well, we'll get to those in a minute. Broom and dust pan for sweeping up the shells. A cement surface, which you saw me using just a moment ago. A hand vise, such as this one. And a pair or 2 of safety goggles, because you might have a lot of nuts, but you only have 2 eyes. So here's some of the nuts you saw me busting at the outset of the video. Usually they wait till the end, but I'm shooting this in reverse. These pieces I've found, once you can break them in half, are a little easier to further break in the vise. So I'll show that. This half has some nice pieces. Notice my garbage can here. Sometimes you have to get rid of the pieces as you go. Maybe we'll try from the side this time. think the compression works nicely. Gives you a little more control. There is a device called Grandpa's Goody Getter. Well, I'm sorry. I did say this was safe for work, but I guess I lied. So that product has like a lever action, but basically does, oops, what you're seeing here. Trying to keep any of the shell fragments from getting in my finished bits here. So as you can see, diminishing returns, but all in all, they're pretty tasty. And I don't know if I would say worth it, but it was a major crop of them this year, and it was fun to learn how to do this. I'd say it's worth doing at least once, and I might try it again in the future, depending on how they are in the given year. There's still plenty more that I could do, and I'm set up to do quite a few more, so I might as well. There's something meditative about the activity of doing it, and they do make a good snack. So, again, sometimes I set aside the more challenging ones to deal with later if the vise doesn't seem to be doing the job. So, this might be easier with a hammer, but I figured I'd show you an alternative. And I would like to get maybe some nice big pieces. Let's see how that did. There it is. Here. Now, doesn't that look like a big piece? And you can see my brown nail. So this is not to be a definitive guide by any means, but a way to show you that it's not that hard and it's easy to get in on the action. So we'll go visit Justin's setup, and then we'll bookend that visit with some footage of my setup, mimicking his setup using materials that I have on hand.
I always use 2 gloves because it's way too easy to rip and not realize it. And when I first started this, I didn't wear gloves and my hands were stained for about 2 months. So I've learned the lesson. So here's what I start with. I get my handy dandy bucket, kitty litter bucket.
I have a few of those.
Water, a little bit of water.
So as you were saying, I think before, but we didn't get on video, what you want is the green ones or yellow ones, not like brown ones rotten away. You want fresh ones, basically.
Yep, correct. Just less of a chance of mold and the nuts to shrivel once they get too dry. They can shrivel.
Gotcha.
Bring them out like this in like one line, and then you just start smacking them. And if they're really dark, you just check to see if there's any grubs. Since I've been mainly focusing on the ones in our neighborhood, or on our yard, they're not as bad. If I go to the ones on the path, they tend to have more bugs.
Just because they've been sitting out there longer and
yeah,
more exposed.
Yeah, for sure. And I like to think of it that like I've done it because you know, if I took away a lot of the bugs from last year, then they didn't hatch and then became bugs this year. So I'm like, yeah, it's all because of me. So there's less now.
There's an investment in this year.
So have you tried the driving over them method?
By accident.
By accident,
Because
yeah. We
there's
did
a bunch
someone
in our driveway. Yeah.
We found someone we pulled up, but yeah, I always thought it seemed like a recipe for popping your tires or something.
That's what I think. Although I think it would be a lot faster than this, but that's...
Now they
part
go
of the fun,
skittering everywhere too then probably, right? You have to go collect them all up again.
Yeah, exactly. So this one right here, I don't want to show ones with bugs. But...
Well, maybe it'd be good to know what we're looking for though, if there are some bad ones. So you just kind of mush them all, basically, just to the point where they kind of split in half.
I got down like a 2-hit system. It's usually about right for getting them open.
Gotcha.
Then once my arm's sore enough, I take it.
Yeah, switch it up.
How heavy is that sledgehammer?
4 pounds.
Okay.
So then to de-hole them, they're pretty easy. They pretty much just pop right out. I try to get as much of the detritus off as I can. And then put them in the bucket. Holes go in a grocery bag.
Oh, so they sink. So this is almost kind of a float test in and of itself anyway.
Yep.
Now, when they were talking about the float test, that was after a drying process then? Or?
Well, it's before.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's also once they've dried, what you can do is put them in a wet bucket again, and it's supposed to be easier to then hit them, to crack them. They don't, I guess they don't shatter as much if you get them wet. I haven't really done that, but.
Okay. So this is more for just a rinse to kind of get the rest of the hull or the black stuff off.
Yep, and you'll see quickly the water will turn a pretty gnarly dark brown.
Well, I definitely had some puddles of that in my garage underneath the bags that I'd collected and had sitting there for a while. So clearly I need to get to them faster than I have been.
As you can see, like this one isn't really de-hulling that easily, but get as much off as you can.
And then I guess you probably do a second round of this after they soak, or do you have like a wire brush or something you use?
I was doing that, but then I realized that it doesn't really affect them that much, so I usually don't really do a second.
Right, okay, so that you just kind of let the whatever is really sticking on there just kind of dry when you dry them. Okay.
I just kind of check them to make sure it's not too much. Weeks, so about what is that, 2.5 months?
Okay.
So.
And so you said the ones that started around August were not as good as the ones that.
When we had I guess it was a full-blown drought there in like July, and I looked it up, and they said that if your nuts are shriveled, that it could be because of they just didn't get enough moisture when they were getting created. So
okay,
I think that's probably what happened, but there hasn't been a whole lot of rain since then, but it seems to not really affect them. They seem to be doing okay since. So.
Well, some of the earliest dropping pawpaws seem to be kind of like less flavorful or more, I guess, affected by like you were saying, drought.
I wonder if they weren't fully ripe.
I sort of wonder that too, if
And
it's
that's
a
the
stress that's put on the tree.
That they dropped for whatever weird reason.
Yeah, just because the tree's like, okay, I need the energy to really put into these other ones, I'm going to drop these ones or something like that. But yeah, I mean, guess 2.5 months of dropping these,
Yeah.
there's probably, you know, that we're probably a past peak drop, I guess, but sort of just the other side of it, I'm guessing.
So no grubs so far.
Well, that's good.
If we don't find any, I know where I can get some.
Grubs?
I bet we have a ton in your car.
Well, that's true. Yeah, I did bring a bunch over, but
Yeah, and you can kind of tell just by the way they look if they have really dark spots. Like this one.
Oh.
No. Okay. I'm looking out here.
I wondered too if you were having more bugs earlier in the season, because now that it's getting a little cooler, there's less of them. I don't know.
Yeah, that could be.
So I was looking online at places that like process these, and I guess they'll buy them for like $20 for 100 pounds of the like
Okay.
just in the hulls or whatever,
Wow.
which is kind of crazy
We know
to
what
think
the
about.
value is.
But yeah, I mean,
Paper.
if you think
Exactly,
about how much of this is actual like nut weight, it's got to be just a fraction, a tiny fraction of what it is as a whole.
Exactly, yeah. And if I think about how much like one of those jars is as far as labor and stuff, I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, I was.
How many
I
hours
was.
go into it?
I was thinking that exact thing, because you were generous enough to share like just a little jar with us, but like just thinking about all the cracking, because these are really just one of the, I would say, toughest nuts to crack probably.
Yeah, the shells are super thick. And everything about them is different. This whole process, nothing's easy with them.
Yeah, nothing is appealing either, because there's that weird pungent aroma they have, and like the staining and everything. It really is a
Yeah,
challenge.
I mean, the gloves get stained
Yeah,
pretty quick.
let's have a look at that.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Do
Yeah,
they
yeah,
wear
yeah.
through quickly too? Does it like weaken them at all, or just, I suppose, like rubbing on the rough
me
hulls?
rubbing on them like that, yeah. I've broken quite a few through, so that's why I always wear the two layers.
I'm curious about what kind of insects manages to.
It's some sort of fly, I heard,
Huh.
but I don't know exactly.
Do you find that the nuts vary a lot in size once they're out of the hull, or does the hull have a lot of variance in thickness, but the nuts are around the same size once you get them out, or?
Well, what's interesting is if you look at the intricacies of like the shells themselves,
Yeah.
they're all different. Like,
Oh, wow.
they're not the same. So yeah, some of them have like kind of this like the top part of them will be like nothing. So like this whole part will be like nothing, and then there's like these chambers in the bottom, and then there's some that are like this one where it was like the whole thing was nuts. So it's just they're all over the place.
Okay, you can't tell from the outside really either then.
Yeah.
But as far as like the actual, like, I guess the shell of the nuts, do they vary a lot in size from one to the next? I guess they look
Yeah, they do.
fairly uniform, but
They do a little bit. I mean, like these two are pretty big difference in size.
I guess that's true, yeah.
So yeah, if you have a bigger one, you're gonna have a bigger shell. But like I said, it doesn't really translate to bigger does not mean better.
Right.
Actually, I find the smaller ones are usually the better ones.
Flavor-wise, or just
Just
intact-wise?
more success rate. I would say.
Gotcha.
And I think maybe it's because they dry faster.
So the nuts in here, we've agitated them a bit. And that is very dark brown water. I suppose you got to be careful where you dump all this too.
Yeah, I probably should be more careful. Luckily, there isn't a lot of like grass and stuff in the backyard because they got the jug-alone or whatever is what it's called, jug-alone.
Yep.
And that jug-alone, it stops stuff from growing.
Your yard is so jug-alone.
Yeah, right, exactly. We have enough black walnuts and stuff. So then, so we head upstairs now. I just pretty much do it anywhere over here. So I've done this, this is probably the part that I'm still trying to figure out the best method. But what I do right now is I just kind of stick the hose in. Try to get it so it stays for a little bit. It never really does, but...
Or I'll hold it in place.
And right now what I'm doing is I'm just letting it run, and so I just let it overflow, and I kind of have it as like at an angle.
Gotcha. So it just kind of dribbles off the edge.
Yep. And I just
There's
wait
that
for
one.
it to start being less brown. I try to mix them up a little bit. So this is the whole point. Do we lose all of these nuts or not? So I guess we'll
So about how long do you end up rinsing these for like this?
5 to 10 minutes. Probably.
Okay.
As just an experiment. These ones
Oh right.
are-
So
these
yeah,
ones are
these are the
floating.
floaters here that we're seeing if they even make a difference or not.
So yeah, so this one did not have
Oh, nothing in there, eh?
anything in there.
So that's a lack of pollination, you think?
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, and then this one, but this one does have nuts.
Okay,
A
so
good amount.
it's sort of a maybe. And
Right.
it looks fine, right? That wasn't
Yep.
grubby or anything or shriveled.
No, that's a good nut. So that's why I'm like, I don't want to throw
Yeah.
away good nuts just because it just didn't happen to float.
Yeah, that actually looks like a decent size one too.
Yeah.
I wonder if it almost indicates like that if the nut is probably light enough weight that if it's big enough inside.
That one's pretty good too.
So 2 out of 3, eh? Could
Yeah.
be, yeah, so probably not worth it, eh?
Yeah, that's where I'm like, I'm just going to keep, so these ones here that are kind of on the edge there, I'm going to keep them.
Yeah, we've gone this far,
Yeah.
culling them and everything.
Yep. So as you can see, the water's getting a little
More clear.
And then I have a brush, but I sometimes I just mix it up with the hose itself. Okay.
Got a runner here.
Go for a little while longer.
So after this rinse, looks like the water's running pretty clear. Is this where they go to the next stage?
Yep.
Just on the racks?
Yeah, they're supposed
Okay.
to go to the drying.
Well, do you do like a toweling off or anything in the meantime, or a drip dry and then put them there, or do they just kind of...
I have, last year I put everything on paper towels first.
Ah,
I haven't been doing that as much.
probably,
Because it just used so many paper towels.
yeah.
So yeah, I just pretty much put them directly on the rack now. Then a little bit longer.
Dried and washed. And now to the racks.
Yep. I think just for now purposes, I'll just move this here. Screen.
Are these all your house screens?
Yeah. We have the ones up that we want. These are just more or less.
Some kind of spare ones.
Yeah. So. Yeah. That way. But I like this. I came up with this just a couple days ago but I like it because then it just goes in the bucket, any water.
Gotcha.
And I just kind of try to do one layer. I know it's dark, but one layer.
So you just toss these a few times a day to kind of
Yep.
keep them
Out of the way.
rotated?
Yep. 'Cause these are the wettest ones over here. Oops. They're not good. It's getting a little overcrowded. So yeah, these ones. Awesome.
So this is the freshest batch here, next to the ones you just put out.
Yep. These were yesterday's, so they'll probably need to be turned for like 3 or 4 days until they're dry enough where you don't worry about mold.
Gotcha.
Let's try to get them back into one layer.
And so, okay, once they're dry, can you put them, or dry enough, I suppose, where they're not going to get moldy? Do you put them in a bucket or a tub, or?
Yeah, so I put them here,
Okay.
and I try to keep it so it's still not too many layers, but you can do a little bit deeper once they're dry enough, and then finally get my gloves off. And yeah, that's the process.
Right on.
And then, of course, throw these away with the bugs. So yeah, our trash has been quite a bit interesting. Couple months.
All right, guys. Justin has me feeling a little squirrely after my visit to the nut house here, and check out my truck nuts. So I just wanted to share what I've been doing. I collected up a bunch of these. They are indeed full of husk maggots, but that's okay, I guess. They just loosen up the hulls and don't get in the shells, so I've heard. So this is what I've been doing with the ones that I gathered up, is just dancing on them. Just straight out the tailgate, since I had them in the truck already anyway. The bags are useless and unreusable after having juicy black walnuts inside, but they kind of keep the nuts together while I'm stomping nut sacks here. So here we have it. Kind of roll them a little bit or whatever too. Alright, so after that, I definitely recommend Justin's suggestion of double gloving. My slightly different drying technique, however, incorporates one more step. I've got it kind of set up like he did, trying to keep things in a single layer here. Got a box fan going. But I'm doing a bleach water dunk before putting them out here. I think it'll help prevent mold. So just a few final thoughts on processing walnuts. Some main takeaways here. Hull maggots don't indicate non-viable nuts, and they're gross but mostly harmless. The float test is not a guarantee of a viable or non-viable nut. Walnuts taste interesting. Black walnuts, anyway. They have sort of a floral thing going on, a blue cheese, even kind of bubblegummy notes we've said. I think the shells are flammable. We'll shortly find out here in a moment. I would say if the shell seems moldy as you're processing it, you might as well get rid of it. I think my bleach dip seems to be pretty effective at preventing mold. They're a healthy snack that probably burns as many calories as they have in them. And what I had in the garage is a bunch of mosquito netting spread across sawhorses and a broken cock frame, just using what I had on hand. So let's see what this does.